Hey everyone, good afternoon. Welcome to the 2020 SGDA Student Games Festival audio panel. In front of us, we have four very skilled and talented audio professionals. First, we have the nomadic and independent sound designer, Ali Cedroni. Is that how you pronounce it?
Definitely. Hey.
Great. You might have heard her work in a variety of Alexa voice games and even on some console releases. She is the recent co-founder of Knock Knock Audio, which I hope I'm pronouncing correctly too.
Yep.
Great. Please give a warm and silent welcome to Ali. Ali, do you have anything to add?
We just launched a company this month. Yay.
Congrats.
Thanks.
Next we have, I guess we're going in order from video. We have David Orr, longtime game development veteran, with both classic and modern titles we know and love, such as Colony, Flight, and Castle Crashers. Please join me in welcoming composer, sound designer, musician, and technical sound designer, David Orr. David, anything to add?
No, I think you covered it.
Nice.
Great to be here.
Next off, we have composer and musician Joe Sanders. Joe is a film industry veteran with high-profile credits such as Marvel's Inhumans, Ms. Juneteenth, and Freeform's Good Trouble. Joe is a contributor to the Universal Production Music Library and winner of the John Lennon Award. Please give another silent welcome to Joe, and do you have anything to add?
That was great, man. Thank you.
Great. And last but not least, we have from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Julian Korzeniowski. Julian is currently in-house sound designer and audio artist at Shell Games, owner of the comfiest chair in the office, and master of making things work. Please please join me once again in welcoming Julian to our panel. Julian.
Hello. Yeah, that sounds great.
Great. So can you talk a little bit about the comfiest chair in the office? These are just rumors I've heard.
So as the rumors go, it's this very, very large chair that has, I'm not sure what the things are called, but there's kind of this circular bit at the bottom of the chair where you can adjust it and it adjusts the back. It also adjusts kind of the up down as well. There are some people that just took very strong likings to it, I'll say.
Got it. Okay, great. But yeah, so how are you guys doing today?
Great.
Great.
Yeah, going well.
Fantastic. Cool. All right. So let's jump straight into some of the questions. We'll start with I should introduce myself. I'm Daniel Ramos, music editor at Sony, not representing them in any way today. But yeah, I'll be moderating this panel. But yeah, so jumping into the first question. So before my first AAA gig, and even game gig, I was freelancing everything from podcasting to audio restoring, webinars. Like, what's the most interesting or different, strange gig you took up, and how did it help you with your career? Any one of you could go first.
I'll go. I've worked in a lot of audio fields. When I was in college, I didn't really know which one I wanted to do. So I started in music design, and then I was doing music recording, only session work, and then I was only doing mastering, and then I switched to film, and then I switched to animation, and then I switched to games. So like it's kind of been all over the place, but I feel like it's really useful to just kind of mess around with all the different fields and learn what you can. Even if you're kind of focusing on games, it never hurts to take on an animation and practice like a particular style of sound design, or do something linear here and there, or work with session musicians, you know? Luckily I haven't done anything too strange.
Right. Great. And have you done anything like that between the time, like after you started working in games?
Yeah, occasionally. I'll pick up a gig here and there if it's interesting enough, or if, since I'm freelance, sometimes it'll just, all of my games will ship at exactly the same time and I'll need something. So that happens from time to time. So you just take on like a quick YouTube video or something really small to just like tide over you.
Very cool. Anyone else?
I'll go. This is a current thing, just an odd, cool gig that it's way different than composing, but I love doing it every single time. I record and edit audio for this podcast called On the Score, which is just about film, TV, music. This great journalist, Daniel Schweiger, basically we go him and I to these composers' studios and or houses, and like, you know, basically, I mean, getting to meet your idols like that and like really ask them questions about how they do stuff, and like getting to see their studios, that's incredible. Like you just I can't be grateful enough ever for that kind of like opportunity. So yeah, that's been a weird, unexpected thing. That's like definitely been good, but not for the music writing stuff, but just for inspiration and, you know, just practicing my audio editing jobs.
Very cool. Yeah. So yeah, Julian?
Sorry, no, I just to throw in there at least some of the stuff that I used to do. I used to do some music for corporate videos. So like various corporations would be trying to promote stuff, and judging by the reactions, I think some other people know about this. And it isn't the most, I guess, creatively satisfying work, I would say, but it did get a little bit of money. But I think the thing that I learned the most was actually how to communicate with people and how to take feedback and stuff like that. And it was actually really, really helpful because a lot of people were actually very, very picky, and knowing how to communicate your thoughts to non-musical people and how to get across kind of just what you want to do.
Right, that's great. Yeah, that's those are definitely really important skills, and it's really great to learn them before you actually dive into a field that's something you want to stay in. Which leads me to my next question for you guys. We're in a very turbulent industry, and if you're in-house, you know, there's insane high turnover rates. Many people don't stay in our industry very long. So, how have you made yourself indispensable to your clients, to your company? How do you keep your workplace saying this person is absolutely necessary?
Speaking from personal experience, I found a good mantra is to try to get good at as much as you can, and not just within sound, but even branching out. So like one thing that I've been doing is just picking up some various like light coding skills, just so not only can I maybe help contribute to the dev work, but also have more intelligent interactions with them. And I find that as somebody who's been now in-house and freelance, a lot of times when you look at the company as a whole, sound can be kind of annexed a little bit and pushed to the side. And so by finding ways to integrate yourself with the rest of the community, you become more indispensable and people value your work.
Great. Anyone else have anything to add?
I guess to kind of add to that.
Sorry. I was just going to say work for yourself, then you can't get fired. But then you do have to worry about your clients and stuff. And I think the variety thing that you were saying is such a good skill. Being able to work on a variety of teams, being able to work with a variety of types of people on teams, things like that. It's really a lot of like people skills.
Great. Julie, you were saying?
Yeah, you guys both just hit what I was going to say. My two things were going to be flexibility, which is basically just variety, and then communication. I think that's going to be my theme of the day, is just being able to communicate with both audio and non-audio people. It's probably just as important, at least to me, as being able to really do the craft.
That's great. And so when you guys are working with a client or a workplace, who do you work closest with outside of the audio department?
Well, for me, it really depends. Oftentimes, like where I'm currently, we have a game designer. It's a very flat level structure, but we have a game designer that's kind of signing off on a lot of the creative decisions. So oftentimes that will be the person that I have one-on-ones with to make sure that everybody's on the same page. But it really depends on the team. If you're working on a team with 3 or 4 people, you might be communicating with everybody. If you're working on a team with 50 people, that may not be possible. And so it's very situational from my experience.
Great. Cool. And anyone else have anything to add?
I just wanted to add something. So a second ago, we were kind of talking about like learning bits about like other people's departments that, you know, don't pertain strictly to sound or, you know, music. like that. I mean, I'm not going to pretend to know how a camera works, but like, at least in my world, like just learning certain film terms, you know, and I'm sure it's the same in the game world, like learning certain, not trying to go insane with the jargon, but just being able to hang. That's where I really come at it from. It's just being able to hang if you're just thrown into a room full of people who all do that, you know? And it's like, you know, I mean, I've felt this a few times too, where like I've heard like a director or like somebody like say like some music jargon to me, and they don't know what it means at all, and they just completely they're like, oh, like I had one guy say like, but you know, go back to that part with the trill, which is like a classical music thing. We were making like an indie rock score, so he just like threw a word out there that he didn't know, and then you know, we still worked together for many years after that, but it was just like, you know, it added confusion and chaos to the process. So yeah, just learning a little bit. That's a really good thing.
No, yeah, that's absolutely great. I mean, I personally know someone who worked with a client who requested that the music sound more purple, and kept it at that.
Oh,
But yeah, let's move on to the next one. There's a saying that skill and talent is second only to being a pleasure to work with and the ability to navigate your industry. How do you think this holds up today? Like, do you believe in it? Like, if you could choose your coworkers, like, what qualities would you look for?
I do get to choose my coworkers, which I think is awesome. One of the best things about starting a business, and also being freelance, you get to pick who you work with. But on top of like just finding people that you're really inspired by, like their work makes me want to do better work constantly. On top of that, especially with clients and stuff, it's just like I really want to work with the people that I get along with. So a lot of my clients come from either like a game jam that I was at and we just got along super well, or different networking events, or like friends of friends of friends of friends that you meet through different conferences and stuff. And you know already because you've met them and you've chatted with them a bunch that they're solid people. They're super inspiring and good to work with, and everyone around them seems to like working with them too. So like these are the people that I'm usually after as much as possible.
Right on. Julian, so you have a lot of in-house experience. What would you say a general in-house recruiter, hiring manager would seek out in someone, say, trying to have a position similar to yours?
That's a good question. So obviously, I guess there is a certain level of craft, and I think that can be shown via portfolios and resumes, just showing that you kind of have an understanding of the different softwares that at least whatever place you're looking to apply to uses and knows about, alongside having the portfolio to show your craft and show stylistically also if you're a decent fit. Another big one, at least from the recruiter side, not necessarily the audio side, is a kind of similar nature or a similar personality with if it fits with the studio or it fits with the people that you work with. Because sometimes you could be a fantastic sound designer, but just not be a great fit for one particular place or another particular place. And that's not your fault or their fault. It's just kind of how it goes down.
Right. Great. That's actually a great segue into the next question. Have any of you ever been in a position where you were not a cultural fit with either the client or the company that you're working with? How did you identify it, and how did you go about it?
I would love to hop in here. So I have never been fired from a gig because of a cultural difference, but I have some, actually multiple regular clients who just, you know, have caused me to think a little bit longer about our communications, and just, you know, just kind of, honestly, it's required a little bit of like work just to like, okay, here's what they mean. You know, there's a language barrier, which is sometimes an issue. You know, like for instance, I have a client who, it's kind of funny. every time, like I've wrote probably like 100 tracks for this client at this point, like a bunch of music, and every time still that she doesn't like something, she just goes for the word disturbing. So she's like, I was very disturbed by that. So at first I was like, you know, like I'm a sensitive, you know, I'm a music artist, you know, I'm like, oh no, shit, what did I do? But no, I was just like, no, that's just, you know, a cultural difference. Like you're saying, like it might mean something different to her. So it made me just kind of think like, okay, maybe I can just not take it at face value and think more about what she might want for that song or whatever. So yeah.
Great. Yeah, no, that's definitely a good way of working with clients. And at least if you're working freelance, you do get to pick and choose your clients. But, you know, you want to keep clients even if you might not be the most compatible partnership in terms of culturally, as long as you're both delivering what you want to each other. But yeah, so next off, many veteran freelancers have different skill sets and focuses than in-house audio people. What skills would you recommend an aspiring freelancer over? What skills would you recommend a freelancer develop and focus on over what skills would you recommend someone who's aspiring to be an in-house developer focus on? Wow, that was a tongue twister. My bad.
Deep breaths. It's okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
For freelance, everything. The more skills that you can start with, the better, I would say. And then as you go, you start to find your niche. So I started out just saying yes to every gig ever. And then I realized that wasn't really working out super well for me. So now I've started leaning towards more indie things. I've been doing a lot more VO stuff because I just really tend to enjoy that. And it gives me more of a chance to work like one-on-one with actors and other creatives. And like as you go, you start to pick up, okay, I might want to specialize a bit. But the more like jack of all trades you can start is probably a better place to begin for freelance, I would say. And in-house studios don't like that, and that's why I don't work there. I've tried.
I 100% agree with that from my own experience. But did you have something to add?
Oh, I'll hop in here. I think as a freelancer, it's extremely important to understand how to value yourself and know what your marketplace value is. Because I can speak from personal experience and also from people I've spoken with and things I've seen. When you're starting out, you tend to be afraid to ask for what you think you're worth, or you don't even know what you think you are worth. And that generally leads to deals that aren't in your favor, whether you end up taking on jobs for pennies, or you're doing it as a favor. Ultimately, you are undermining your own value, and you get the reputation of being somebody who's doing something for nothing. And then that's how people treat you. And it doesn't necessarily mean that people are intentionally, treating you in a poor way, but you need to have a good sense of your own value and stand up for yourself, especially when you're negotiating. In-house, you have salary negotiations and things, but it's not always at the forefront of your mind.
That actually reminds me a lot of some other stuff in freelance too that you kind of forget. There is so much project management, contract writing, admin work, follow-up emails, dealing with cold calls, like all of it, everything that a company would do, your health insurance, because we're in America, like all of it is you now. And that is so much to learn and like take on by yourself, on top of needing to know how your rates work, needed to know how to price and negotiate because you don't have a sales team for you. Like it's so much more work.
Yeah, 2 words, right. Impeccable communication. That is what has worked for me. I didn't used to have it. That is for dang sure. And over time, I really tried to get better at it because I used to be terrible at responding to things and project management, all that stuff. And yeah, just impeccable communication just really makes you look good. And it ultimately will make you less stressed out,
Right. So, Julian, do you have anything to add about in-house? Before you answer that, I'm taking a look at the Twitch chat, and Valozard says the entire conversation has been very interesting because they have been told often that jack of all trade type people will end up being no one. Before we go to Julian, I just want to address that it really depends on who you're talking to because everyone has different experiences with how this goes. Like Ali said earlier, in-house positions, you're definitely going to want to focus on one thing, as opposed to freelancers who really do actually do everything. In my personal experience, I've known sound designers that will never touch Wise, that will never touch an in-game engine, but I've never met a freelancer who has not been able to do everything. But Julian, could you elaborate a little bit more about like in-house expectations?
Sure. It's kind of interesting because at least my company is about 100 people, which is considered small, I guess, in the gaming industry. And there was a lot of things that I do share of like having to kind of be a jack of all trades, having to be very flexible and move between, sometimes 3 or 4 or 5 different projects that are all in different, in Wise, in Fmod, in this and that, in Unity and Unreal. I'm trying to think some of the things, at least for in-house, is knowing, I think one of the big things is knowing how to be a good team member. I think that's also something that freelancers need to do as well at times, but like very much like knowing when to push the boundaries in terms of like, I really want this audio feature, or I really want to push on this particular audio thing, and knowing when to back off, knowing it goes back to communication, all this other type of stuff. And then there is a lot more said, I guess, on industry standards of like setting, knowing specific stuff of like how a client will want certain projects configured or something like that. That is probably also something that a lot of freelancers deal with too. Yeah.
These have been great. This was a great conversation. Anyone have any closing thoughts on this specific topic? No? All right. Let's move on. So on a lighter note, a running joke, at least in my office, has been you hear people everywhere, or you hear people around say, that's game development for you, specifically when something goes off the rails. I'm sure all of you have heard this at least once before. What's the first, well, that's game development for you moment that comes to mind?
Can I just say everything? I feel like that's just like a constant state of, wow, everything's a trash fire. But it's like fine, but like my life is a trash fire, my job's a trash fire. Like it's just like the whole thing, all of it. Is that too vague?
I mean, you're not wrong. If this is your experience, I can attest that personally I've experienced the same things in like waves.
Yeah, there's just so many ebbs and flows because like you'll have like, especially in freelance, you'll have 30 projects and then you'll have no projects, and then you'll have like one that like there's a single bug that you've been working on for like 6 months, and then another one is like you've been waiting on like one person to do one thing for months, and it's just constant. So
I know one that at least I didn't personally experience, but there was a team, actually it was our company released a VR title called Until You Fall, and it's kind of a VR like sword fighting, that kind of thing. But early on in development, the team was really, really excited about what they had. They'd been pushing forward, done all this kind of stuff. And then they brought in, I forget his name, but one of the guys on For Honor that did all the combat, game combat and all that kind of stuff. And he came in, he said, this is really bad. This is terrible. So the entire team just was like, oh, okay. And then they basically just threw everything away and started from the very, very beginning. And it turned out to be great, which is awesome. But that was my kind of like, oh man, yep, that's game development for you.
So how did an event like that affect your team's morale?
So I was right next to the team actually.
Oh, right.
And, but they actually bounced back really, really quick. I think that they really believed in it just at its core, what it was. So obviously the initial impact was, people feeling pretty bad about stuff. But then some people got really attached to, oh man, let's try this new thing. Oh man, let's move it around. Like it kind of opened up the chance to be able to test out and try new things. And that's, I guess, the silver lining in that sense, at least.
Right. Great answer. Anyone else have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll add crunch time. I mean, all professions have it at some point, but boy, if I had a nickel for every time there was radio silence for weeks, and then this monsoon of work just fell in my lap from a developer saying, we need this immediately, we need this immediately, we need this immediately, and not getting the heads up. I mean, that lines up with communication, and there could be some improvement there in communication lines. But I know that crunch time is an all too often occurrence, both in-house and freelance.
On the topic of crunch time, could I add one little thought there?
Of course.
Just when, like everyone's saying, this is going to happen to you if it hasn't already, right? Because everyone here has experienced, everyone on this panel has experienced that. It is so important to take the best care of yourself mentally, physically, for that reason. If you are operating at tip-top shape, then you will be prepared for that crunch time, and it won't decimate you when it happens. It'll just be a bit of a rough patch, and then you can go back to things, So take care of yourselves.
I will say, at least from my personal experience, is there are companies, including my company, that are starting to actually really value not having crunch time. And it's, it's here or there in the industry, it's kind of, I feel you're on one side or the other. But my company is very much 5:30, 6 o'clock, you got to get out of there. You got to have your own life. We're not going to do this. And I have had to crunch very, very little. But yes, knowing how to, or not knowing how to crunch, but knowing how to understand crunch and all that kind of stuff is very important.
Absolutely. Are we talking about crunch now, or are we moving to something else? Because is that we just kind of scooted? But if we're talking about crunch, just real quick, I think half the reason that we started Knock Knock, Knock Knock is me, Oda, and Martin. They are both in Norway. But our whole purpose of starting it was so that we could kind of stabilize our ebbs and flows of freelance and not have that crunch. Because when Martin has something that he needs to crunch on, at least me and Oda can jump in and help throw some assets at him or something so that he doesn't have to crunch like that. Because we've all been burned by it so bad. And when you freelance and you crunch, then you just lose all of your motivation to do anything ever again. So we're trying to kind of do self-care by watching out for each other instead. And also subcontracts are totally a thing that you can do even if you don't have a company. So keep that in mind if you're looking for some help with your crunch and whatnot.
Absolutely. On that note, has anyone else here started their own company with similar intents?
I'm thinking about it now.
You should. It's great. Highly recommend.
All right. So how is that? How has Knock Knock been treating you? How is business, if I may ask?
It's been good. I mean, we are pretty brand new, so there's the whole process of what is a company, and also we're based in Norway, so it's a lot of reading things that I can't understand. But the big thing has been, we were talking about it a long time ago. We had talked about it a few times years ago, and I think we finally got to a point where all three of us had enough steady work to keep ourselves safe. We didn't want to jump into a company that wouldn't have enough money into it or wouldn't have enough projects. And then once we finally started getting too full of our own projects, we kind of combined forces in a way. So it's something that we've wanted to do for a bit, but just didn't have enough time or energy or resources to do until just now, when all of us have exactly enough work. And it's a weird thing to figure out you have enough bandwidth to do something like that. And it's a huge jump, and it's definitely terrifying. And then on top of the whole freelance thing, now you have to worry about marketing and legal rights and visas, and there's even more admin now. But I know that when I have a job and it's like kicking my ass, I have 2 more people and whoever else we feel like subcontracting to like really have my back. So that's been cool. And then we also have all 3 of us essentially acting as sales reps, more or less. So Martin will get a job, Oda will get a job, I'll get a job, and we'll all decide together whether or not we want to take it and like figure out rates together. And it's a little less stressful than doing it on your own. So
That's great. That's great. Which that actually leads me to the next question. So a lot of game developers are definitely introverted people. I'm somewhere on that line too. I'm not quite sure. But so how would you guys go around marketing yourself and networking when you're introverted? What challenges do you face and how do you overcome them?
Okay, so for this one, I'm kind of a big, I might be a masochist, I don't know, but I'm a big believer in like for problems, just throwing yourself into the deep end. So essentially like, that's kind of what I did. Because I used to be I'm still very awkward as you can see, but I'm better at going into rooms and networking now. And that used to be a thing I was terrified of. It took years of practice to get good at that. But now, I actually just wrote this to a grad student who I was talking to, who was interviewing me just about the industry the other day. And I sent a message off that said, if you can walk into a room and get a gig out of it, you're probably crushing most of the competition, or a lot of it at that point. So, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but the solution I found is just put yourself in very scary situations like conventions. Well, when we can go to, conventions in person, things like that, introduce yourself to people, just throw yourself in the deep end.
Nice. Anyone else have anything to add to that?
I'll just add something real quick. I consider myself a pretty introverted person, and I have the exact same issue where when I'm at conventions, it's scary to get started. I found that a couple of things. One, the first interaction that you have is generally the hardest, and you can it's almost like starting an engine. And then once you start talking to people, you've got momentum, you've got energy, and you just start doing it. So telling myself the first one's the hardest helps kind of support myself psychologically. But another thing that I've actually had a lot of success with and luck with is by trying to maintain relationships with people that I already know and make sure that they know that I'm always looking for new opportunities and new connections. And I've gotten so many different jobs from relationships I never thought would create them. And so I think it's always helpful, especially if you're somebody who isn't just naturally go talk to everybody. Make sure you keep those relationships with people that you've worked with. Make sure you keep them warm and they pay dividends.
I like that last one.
So at least 2 things is, 1, I'm definitely very introverted, and 2, I'm still bad at this. So take this all with a grain of salt. But at least I know that, like, at least on the emotional side, it's okay to fail. And it's okay to feel really bad when you get rejected or don't get, an email back or any of that kind of stuff. And at least for me, I think like figuring out the intervals of being able to pick yourself up and do it again, as those get smaller, you know that you're getting just a little bit better at what you're doing.
Absolutely. So speaking of putting yourselves out there and networking, how do you recommend people new to this find events or conferences or really anywhere they could put themselves out there?
So I would love to talk. So I can't talk on the last one because I'm extroverted to a fault. But I also do just a ton of traveling. So every single time I go to a new city or a place or whatever, I usually try to look for wherever their game circle is. So either it's through IGDA Facebook or it's through Eventbrite, just looking up game dev group or something. And usually they'll either have like Friday meetup at a cafe, or some sort of talks on like weekends. And you can usually find at least like 3 to 4 options on Eventbrite per city if it's a large city. I mean, I'm even in Detroit right now, and there are 4 that I can drive to right now. If we could drive places. But in a normal sense, you can usually find new places to go, and usually I'll show up at the first ones and then just kind of get an idea of the place. Like, hey, what's the industry like over here? What are your issues? What are your, like, what studios are nearby? What are you missing around here? And just kind of keeping in touch with all of those people. And another big thing when it comes to networking is just kind of like thinking of people as like not so much people that you have to talk to get work, but like everyone here is like just a fucking sorry, I swore. Everyone here is a really awkward nerd. So like we're all awkward nerds. We all have something in common, and we can all be friends through that. So like I like to think of the people that I'm talking to as like future friends and not future business partners, because it makes it a little less stressful. And it's just kind of like people that I want to hang out with and go to bars to and talk about industry stuff. It's really hard not to swear.
That's a good one.
All very true. Von Baron on Twitch says, pro tip, bring an extroverted friend. Really does work. I agree, Von Baron. All right, so transitioning into a spicier topic, the darker side of networking, or I wouldn't say darker side, a definitely more controversial side to networking. There are 2 schools of thoughts on the topic of cold calling. Some people swear by it, saying that it's how they got their first gig and they wouldn't be in the industry without it, while other people are disagree very much with that idea, with certain arguments saying that this person was not expecting that call, or you're using people's time, and that sort of argument. What do you got? What are your guys' opinions on cold calling?
One of you had something prepped, right? Emails?
I mean, I can throw something in.
Okay.
I personally don't have a super strong opinion one way or the other. I have a friend who has had a fair bit of luck cold calling. He's also pretty extroverted and just one of these people that's magnetic, and I think that plays up to him. It's not something I've ever relied on, but I will say this: if you do decide to go the cold call or cold email route, absolutely make sure that you make it a good first impression, and don't be informal, and you want to be extremely appreciative of people's time. People are definitely more likely to be receptive to you if you respect their time. So that's what I'll throw in about that.
Absolutely. One argument I've heard, one trick I've heard is definitely when you're reaching out to someone without prior arrangements, instead of making it about how they could do something for you, make it about how you could do something for them. And if you focus on that, the outcome would definitely be much better than if you were expecting something for yourself in return. But yeah, anything else to add to this?
I think it does depend on how you write it. Also, somebody has some pretty serious feedback. But I've gotten a few cold calls. Most of my cold calls have to do with voice actors, because they know that I do a lot of voice casting and stuff now. And I've seen a few that are written really nicely. It's like, hey, not trying to take up your time, just like I would love to work with you guys. You seem really cool, and like I liked this and this that you worked on. Like, make sure that you actually say that you've like looked into it and you actually care about working with like our company or whatever. The more personal it can be, like obviously the better. Because I know that you took the effort to actually do it, and it's not just for everyone. And then there are other ones where it's just been like, hello team, I have a VO reel, please hire. And that shit ain't gonna work. So yeah, be personable, pretend that you're just meeting me, and be nice and make me feel like you actually like looked into me, because then I'll look into you. I don't know.
Could I hop in here? By the way, I'm so sorry. My computer just decided to freeze right in the middle of this. On the topic of cold emails, I'm not going to waste time like reading too much of these off or whatever. I originally like prepared some, but just yeah, you don't have to like shower us with compliments. In fact, I don't want that because that's weird too. It's like as long as it's not like a copied and pasted like hello person, please hire me. You know, like just why are you reaching out to us? That's what I would really love to hear. It's like why me? Like, you know, because there are lots of us out there that are audio professionals. So ideally, you know, you should be reaching out to someone who's you know, going to be a good fit because you deserve it.
Absolutely. So we have one more question before we start looking at audience Q&As on Twitch. We're not going to have time for too many, but if you have any, please leave them in the chat now. And for you guys, I have one last question for you. Something on a lighter note, a more jovial note, I suppose. Well, not really jovial, but so the art industry is ever evolving. And there's tools, there's trends, everything is coming and going like a flash. What's your outlook for the next few years in game audio, or in film audio, or in audio in general?
Like, where's it moving to, or
Where's it moving to? A general outlook.
I do think at the very least within like the pandemic and stuff, because that's all we can ever talk about, games is sitting in a pretty comfortable spot. I feel so bad talking to friends in like any sort of service industry. I'm just like, yeah, no, things really haven't changed like work-wise. Maybe I have more, I don't know. And I feel kind of like a butt saying it. But I think luckily we're not going to get hit too hard economically with that. And I think we're just kind of going to chug along for a little bit pretty safely, which is good news. But industry-wise, we could use some fixes.
Yeah, just to add, I've noticed kind of the same thing. I think that this whole crazy world that we live in and what's going on right now has made people more productive who can work remotely. I don't know, they have less distractions or something, because I've had the same kind of experience. I'll just say, business-wise, yeah, I agree, I echo the sentiments. I don't think we're going to see any near-term downturn, but I do think from a kind of creative direction standpoint, I think we're going to continue to see games become more and more adaptive, game audio become more and more adaptive. I know we're always trying to look at more ways that we can engage the player with audio, with sound effects. Middleware helps with that, but we are developing our own custom middleware to do things that we can't do elsewhere, and I think you're going to see more of that. More, especially with like Unreal 4, what they're doing with the Unreal Engine 4, what they're doing with the audio tools. I mean, we really are in an exciting time, and it's important that we keep an eye on it.
Right on.
I guess to go off of that, I feel like audio people are getting even more power, I guess, in terms of being able to like contribute to the entire game experience. Yeah.
I will say this, obviously games aren't as much my world, but from what I understand, soundtrack sales are going nuts and just have been for a while. So, I mean, that's very exciting to me, and I don't know where that will be in a few years, but I just think that, it's great that I think honestly the audio folks are getting more recognition and just understanding within all the communities. So, yeah.
Absolutely. All great answers. All right, so now we're going to look at some community questions. Alex from UC Berkeley asks, what advice do you have for ensuring that sound design and music complement each other? We could probably go hours into this, but let's try to keep it a little bit on the briefer side.
the composer. If I know that there's a different composer or someone that I don't work with very often in it, I'll ask them for their rough tracks and stuff just to get an idea of what vibe they're going for and try to like design while, maybe not exactly while listening to their stuff, but like listen to a bunch of their stuff, then go sound design, then come back to it, make sure it melds, mix it in maybe, stuff like that, and just kind of like see how it fits.
Great. Cool. If no one has anything else, we'll move on to the next question. Michael Brajo, forgive me if I'm butchering your last name. Any rules of thumb on mixing a game? What are your general rules of thumb?
I know at least one is to like keep track of, I guess for better or for worse, like the different frequency ranges that you have for your various stuff. I know at least I work a lot in VR, and if you have these really complex, dense, interesting sounds, and they're all layered on top of each other, it just becomes a little bit of a mess and a little bit garbled. So being able to be like, oh, I know that I really want these mids here, and I really want these highs here. So really like being able to determine and chop up where all your sounds want to live on the spectrum, I guess.
Great.
Yeah, to add to that real quick, and hopefully this doesn't need to be said, but I'm going to say it anyway. Test your sound on multiple devices when possible. I do a lot of mobile development, and I've got a few different iPhones. I've got an Android phone just to see how things sound. Likewise, if you're doing console, a couple TVs, go in your car, right? That's the classic. It pays dividends doing that.
Nice. All right.
Yeah, one more for like working on different sets of systems. Just saying, like that's for music too. Like, yeah, that's really important.
Absolutely. Jonathan_dev on Twitch asks, personally, as a sound designer, how much do you use library effects over stuff you record yourself?
It depends on what it is. It really, really depends on what it is. So the thing with library sounds is I like to say if you're copy and pasting it, you're just, why am I hiring you? Like I don't like to do that. Everything should be custom to some degree. So like pulling different resources from different libraries and layering of the other, no matter how much you do, like as long as it's changed in some way, then you're making it more personal. And like, how am I gonna go record friggin' monkey sounds? Like there are certain things that you just can't do yourself if you need them to be accurate or very specific to a certain area. But anytime I get the chance to like record something that I do have access to, so I've been doing a lot of skateboard recording because I'm doing a skateboarding game, or Skate City is adding more content. It's a mobile game, and I did all the recording for that by hand, and I feel like it came out differently because there are so few libraries for skateboarding sounds. If I heard the same ones over and over again, I would recognize it. So you kind of want to avoid recognition and also like give it your own twist and things like that. So it's a good 50-50, I would say, to be responsible.
Absolutely. Anyone else?
I guess the only thing that I would add is if it seems way too hard to actually record the thing, don't feel guilty about using a library. That's at least my personal opinion on that stuff.
Great. Let's see. Brandon Delahoy on Twitch asks, for the freelancers, what are some qualities that good clients have in common? What are common talking points that you tend to discuss with good clients?
Talk to us, like, real early in the process. I want to know everything about your game 6 months before you need me. That's my favorite kind of client. Actually, tell me, like, a year before you need me. That'd be great. Just, like, as soon as possible. Send me everything. Don't expect any work yet, but just let me know.
Seriously. I'll add to that. The best working relationships I've had have been with people who value what I do and treat me like a valuable addition to the team and not just somebody providing sounds or music. The more we are looped into the process, the more homogenous everything is in the game. The art plays off the sound plays off and so communication is really key to being a good client.
Right on. All right. Razasin on Twitch asks, what free resources, if any, would you recommend in trying to compose a background score as an indie dev? What are some available tools that you would recommend someone who is trying to make a score for perhaps the first time?
Are these like free tools? Is that what I'm?
That's what the question. But if you know any low cost tools as well, this would apply to, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty sure Spitfire Audio has a lot of free stuff. They have like their labs thing. I have a couple things from that. The piano is like used on everything ever. It's on so many scores. Yeah, there's that. I'm blanking right now, but I can type a few things if you guys like some low cost stuff, because it is out there. There's the really expensive tools, and then there are some cheaper ones.
Awesome. Great. Well, that's all the time we have for audience questions, unfortunately. Do you guys have anything to plug, or where can we find you on social media if that's your thing? Let's start with Allie, and then we'll move down the line.
Yeah, everything I have is under my name, Allie Cedrone, and now you can also find me at knockknockaudio.com, on Twitter, on Twitch, whatever. Yeah, all of them.
David. Yeah, you can check out my website, davidorr.net. Make a website if you haven't. You can find me on Twitter, David Orr Music. I'm not super active on social media, but you certainly can reach out to me. I'll see a message. Also LinkedIn, David Orr Music as well.
Joe?
All my social media tags are Joe Sanders. So my name, Joe Sanders Music. And then just my website, joesandersmusic.com. Yeah, if you wanna reach me, my website has a email button, or you can just DM me on Instagram.
And Julian?
So main way to contact me is through my website, korzeniowskimusic.com, which is fortunately pretty hard to spell. I guess I could try to type it out or something for that. That's the main way, that or LinkedIn with Julian Korzeniowski.
Great. Well, this has been Allie, David, Joe, and Julian, and me, Daniel Ramos. And thank you so much for tuning in, and enjoy the next panels. Take care.
Thank you.